Hello, and happy fall to all our friends from the Financial Advisory Group. Well, fall is finally here, and to be honest with the markets, that September wasn't too much fun. We'll get to that in a minute. But the format for today's video is going to be a little bit different. We want to start having some of these videos not just focus on things like the market that, to be honest, we can't control, but let's focus on some things that are more important, things that we can control. Today's video, we're going to have an interview with Kellie Fogarty from Fogarty Insurance Advisors. Her and her husband, Chris, are two of the most educated people we know in the business on Medicare. Medicare can be a very confusing topic, right? Once we hit age 65, there's all these choices we have to make. We get inundated with mail. We decided to bring Kellie on board for an interview today, Ben and myself, and throw some questions her way to help her explain Medicare a little bit more simply to us from a 50,000-foot view. Before we get to that, though, I can't go without any charts. So as we spoke about, September wasn't too much fun. But if we zoom out a little bit, we'd ask the question of, we can all decide which line to focus on, which color to focus on. If we look at this last third quarter, it was not very fun, right? The market sort of took it on the chin a little bit. But if you remember the last couple of videos, we hinted at that when a market has such a great run that this had from last September, it's normal to expect the market to hit a little bit of hit a blip, which we hit. If we zoom out, which line do we want to focus on, right? The green line, which the trend continues to still be okay, or this red circle, which focuses on just the down quarter? Our view is to focus on the progress we've made since last September, which is much better than where we were again a year ago. Blips are normal, they happen. And this is just a normal part of the healing process in our view. If you look, the other part we hint at, and we hinted at before, is September's not a fun part. Historically, September's the worst month for the markets. Well, that held true again this year. The good news, the fourth quarter tends to be pretty good. Now, that doesn't mean every fourth quarter is good, but it does mean that historically, the fourth quarter tends to bring better times ahead. So sure, there's issues, right? We can focus on things like rising gas prices. We can focus on the rising interest rate environment, which is something we're paying a very close eye on, that with interest rates continuing to rise, it will make it harder for this market to climb higher at this point. But in our view, there's also good things to focus on, that the job market still remains strong. Companies are still in good shape. And if you look around, there are good signs that inflation is easing in a lot of different places that are important to us. So again, to us, September was not fun. That was sort of to be expected. And let's hope that this pattern of the last couple of years continues, where if you look for the last 3 years and now fourth, September has, as we quote here, stunk. The good news is the fourth quarter has actually come back pretty strong the last 3 years after a non-fun September. Now, back to the part of the video that's more important, to focus on what we can control. Markets are an uncontrollable beast. We can control, though, our educational knowledge about topics like Medicare and the decisions we make around Medicare. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to our interview with Kellie Fogarty from Fogarty Insurance Advisors, an excellent resource for here and us at the firm. Kellie and her husband, Chris, have been a great find for us as a resource to turn our clients over to help them in the Medicare process. So hope you enjoy the next couple minutes where Ben and myself sat down with Kellie and quizzed her a little bit on the topic of Medicare. Enjoy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ben Burkhart with the Financial Advisor Group, and today we have Kellie Fogarty from Fogarty Insurance Advisors. She's going to be talking about Medicare. Kellie, thank you so much for being on today with us to discuss Medicare, and some of our viewers might already know her. I think we've been in contact, at least the firm, for 5 years. Kellie specifically has around 16 years of experience as an independent insurance provider. So we like to refer any clients that have specific questions about Medicare to the Fogarty team. So without any further ado, let's, I guess, kick it off. All right.
Thanks for being here, Kellie.
Yeah, thank you. So for just to get into the topic, let's go over the basics of Medicare. What is Medicare? Who can enroll in Medicare? We'll start there.
I'd say the most simple explanation of what Medicare is normally for someone turning 65 or older, or someone who has end-stage renal disease or kidney failure is eligible to get health insurance through the government called Medicare. And then Medicare is made up of parts. So to not go too far down any rabbit hole, Medicare is made up originally of two parts. You got Medicare Part A, which is your hospitalization benefit. That also includes a skilled nursing facility coverage, home health care, and hospice care. So Part A is anytime you're sicking in a bed, the places you could be sicking in a bed in. Medicare Part B is your medical insurance, kind of what you think of as day-to-day healthcare, doctor visits, lab work, x-rays, procedures. And this part of Medicare generally costs most individuals at this juncture in 2023, $164.90. But that can range depending on if you're a very high income earner or if you're very, very low income. And then finally, there's two other parts of Medicare. There's Medicare drug coverage, which is Part D. And then there's one of the insurance products that I help people see if it's a good fit for them is called Part C of Medicare. And it's actually a product that wraps hospital, medical, and drug coverage all into one plan. So that's kind of a high level ABCDs of Medicare.
Yeah, so that was good to hit the different parts of Medicare. Maybe something just before we get into the details of Medicare, people might be confused between, since they sound the same, Medicare and Medicaid. They're definitely very different. So just kind of go over the overview of maybe Medicaid and how it differs from Medicare.
Sure. When I'm listening to news reports and stuff and they're talking about Medicare, I always cringe because I'll hear even news reporters say Medicaid when they mean to say Medicare. And I'm like, that's not what you mean. They are very different things. So Medicare is something, regardless of your income, when you're 65 or you have a disability for 2 years, that's kind of the point where if you're younger than 65, you can get Medicare early. You can qualify for health insurance through the government called Medicare. Medicaid is specifically more tied to your income level. So if you're low income and you have very low assets, you can qualify for Medicaid. There are people that have both. They're called dual eligibles. So I have people that are Medicare and Medicaid, and there are specific products tied directly to that population.
Great. And you mentioned income a lot. So is there a specific income threshold that maybe your Part A, Part B, they are more expensive now that you've reached whatever threshold? What do you know is there a dollar amount?
Exactly. Oh, yes, I actually have it right in front of my face here because working with a lot of different financial planners, you get people that are high net worth individuals. So you got to be really prepared for that question in my world. So I got it somewhere in front of me here. It went away. If you're an individual and your income is under $97,000 a year, or a married couple and your household income is under $194,000 a year, you'll just pay the base rate for Medicare, which is currently $164.90. So if you're under those limits, you're fine. But normally when I'm talking with clients, I have those numbers kind of bold on my screen and say, hey, are you above these? And the government's going to look back 2 years. What was your income 2 years ago? Were you above that threshold? And if you are, then you might get a letter saying that you are going to get an increased cost to your Medicare called IRMA. So I always try to be very proactive with clients. Hey, you might get this letter. Now, if your income is lower because you stopped work or certain circumstances, there is an appeal form that you can say, hey, my income was high 2 years ago. I was working, I was killing it. Now I'm not working as much. My income has dropped. There is an appeal form. I have that right on my desktop that I shoot over to people and say, hey, yeah, you're going to get this IRMA letter that you're going to pay more for Medicare, but here's the form to appeal it.
Okay.
And one thing from a planning perspective, I think that's IRMA is a word that clients may hear us utter from time to time. And in general, if you hear us ever saying that we're trying to play the tax game when it comes to income, part of it is the income brackets, but a bigger part for someone 65 plus is being very aware of what the IRMA levels are. And one clarification too for people to understand is if you go $1 over that IRMA level, you're paying that higher amount. different than marginal brackets where it doesn't hurt you as much. So it really becomes important to pay attention to those IRMA levels. And that's part of our role in the financial planning world is Kellie can handle which plan to be on. We try to control that income level so we avoid hitting those levels.
And it's nice to know that they're working with people that are watching and are aware of that. So it ties our worlds together. So
Yes.
while I might say, hey, this is coming, you may have already prepared them a little bit for it. Or if they're looking to redo their kitchen, they're going to pull a lot of money out of investments. They're thinking, well, what is this going to do to my Medicare because I pulled $100,000 out to get my, a brand new kitchen.
Yep.
Yeah, great. And now we have some good overview of what Medicare is. How do people get enrolled in Medicare? I know the initial enrollment period's a thing. So when is the initial enrollment period? And then how would someone go about enrolling? Is there paperwork involved? Anything like that?
Well, it depends on the certain situation. So whenever I talk with someone, I kind of have to feel out what their situation is. One, the easiest is I'm turning 65 here in August. I know I want to start Medicare. I'm not going to stay on employer coverage. Turn my Medicare on. Those people, really, I like to talk with them 3 months prior to the month they turn 65. So right now I'm really working on my August people and getting their Medicare turned on, figuring out what insurance plan they want. The paperwork normally, the government really likes it if you use their website. So normally when I talk with people, I'll say, do you have a username and password for the Social Security website? And I can walk them right through where to go on that Social Security website to tell the government, yep, I want to turn on my Medicare A and B for this date, I say August. And Medicare normally always starts the first of your birth month. So that's another common misconception is your birthday might be August 18th. They're always going to bump you up to the first of that month. So if you're new to Medicare, there's really just an online application on Social Security's website. You can also set up an appointment with the Social Security office, but that's going to delay you a little bit. They're going to make you wait a little bit. And then sometimes people have the ability to go into the Social Security office and walk in and get it set up right then and there. But that's a little Russian roulette of who you get and what their timing and availability is. So it's always easiest if we're able to go to that website. I'm really good at walking you through that because it's going to be the most straightforward way to go. The other situation would be is if you are saying, hey, I am not going to retire at 65 or my spouse is still working. If you, the Medicare person who's eligible or your spouse who's younger or older is working and they have really good employer benefits, you might want to punt down the road and turn on Medicare later. If that's the case, we just say most cases turn on Medicare Part A only, which again is just going to Medicare's website and turning Part A on only, which I'm happy to help with. And when the time comes, you do want full-blown Medicare, you have your employer fill out a form that attests that you had insurance that window of time that you went past 65. So there's no penalties. That's probably the most common scary point that I have to drill home to people. I don't want to worry about doing something wrong with the government. What if I go past 65? Well, if you're working and your spouse is working and you have credible coverage through that employment, those two things are in place. You can go up to 90 if you're so inclined.
Because that's a question we get a lot, Kellie, as more clients these days, right? They don't necessarily have to work, but they may want to work beyond 65. Is that when that client comes in and says, hey, I'm going to be 65 in 3 months, Medicare eligible, is the best thing to ask their HR person sort of what happens, sort of what's their best step? Go to Medicare and get Part A turned on. What do you recommend in that situation for that person who's sort of, do they have to talk to HR? Is it better sometimes to go on Part B, or that's where, hey, contact Kellie and she can help?
Contact Kellie and I will help because the answer depends.
Okay, good
answer. A couple nuances. Yeah, the short answer is it depends. But a lot of times HR departments, I just had a guy last week who he's the first one in his company to hit the Medicare age. So his HR department is flying blind in terms of the whole other side of Medicare turning on. So some HR departments are great and some don't know one side from the other. So you want to sometimes evaluate, is your employer coverage great? If it is, I'll say, hey, call me when the time is ready. Or maybe Medicare is better. It depends on every situation. I think it's better to say it depends.
Good answer.
Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Kellie from Fogarty Insurance Advisors. Damien and I had a great time talking with her. And this week was on the basics of Medicare. And we'll put out a video probably maybe next month on more of the ins and outs of the supplemental plans. And we just dive deeper into some more of the planning topics around Medicare. So stay tuned for that one. But going forward, hopefully we'll try and incorporate more of these types of videos where we're interviewing people or just talking about some more planning topics rather than only ever talking about what's happening in the stock market. But give us your feedback. Let us know how you liked it. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Thank you and enjoy from the Financial Advisory Group.